Isn't it wild out there? The world. I mean, like everything's moving so fast these days, you know?
It's a lot to take in for sure.
It's like trying to drink from a fire hose sometimes, you know what I mean?
Totally.
And then in the middle of all that, we're all trying to find something solid, something to hold on to, something meaningful. And, well, today we're diving into how the Urantia book tackles this whole idea of faith in a world that just won't quit changing.
Yeah, this deep dive is all about Paper 99 and how it sees personal religious experience as kind of an anchor in the storm of all this social upheaval.
Right, because it's not like things are slowing down anytime soon, are they?
No, not at all. If anything, the Urantia book seems to suggest things are about to get even wilder.
Okay, so no pressure or anything.
Right, but the interesting thing is where this perspective comes from. We're talking about a Melchizedek of Nebadon.
Okay, I'm intrigued already, but remind me who that is again.
Right, so in the Urantia book, a Melchizedek is kind of like, well, imagine a universal observer, someone who's seen it all when it comes to human history.
So they've got the view from up there, the cosmic perspective on all this.
Exactly, and they're basically saying, buckle up, folks, because this ride's just getting started.
So what's the view like from way up there? What do they see coming down the pipeline?
Well, they're saying that this isn't just about, getting used to the latest gadget or app. It's much bigger than that. We're talking a fundamental reshaping of society as we know it.
I can get with that. Like, it's not just a new iPhone every year. It's the entire job market changing, right?
Yeah.
Information overload on a daily basis. It's a lot.
It really is, and that's what I find so fascinating about the Urantia book. It doesn't just point at the problem, it offers solutions, or at least ways to think about navigating it all.
Okay, so what's their advice? How do we even begin to wrap our minds around all this change and find some solid ground?
Well, that's where personal religious experience comes in. That's the key thing the Urantia book keeps coming back to.
Interesting. So not just religion in general, but a specific kind of religious experience. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, because the text actually draws a sharp distinction between that and institutional religion.
So they're not talking about just going to church or temple every week.
Right, they're getting at something much more personal, more about your own internal connection with whatever you consider to be divine. In fact, there's this one passage that really stood out to me. Let me see if I can find it.
Yeah, I'd love to hear that.
Okay, here it is. It says, organized religion is often so deeply woven into the very systems that need changing, it can become like a ship stuck in a harbor.
Wow, that's a powerful image. So if organized religion is like a ship stuck in harbor, what's the open sea? What are they proposing instead?
Well, they're suggesting that personal faith, this deep internal connection to the divine, is more adaptable, more suited to navigate the vast ocean of change that's swirling around us.
Okay, so how do we do that? How do we set sail, so to speak?
That's where it gets really interesting.
So we're not talking about like becoming hermits, right? Just retreating from the world and hoping for the best.
Not at all. Actually, it's kind of the opposite. The text really emphasizes being an active participant in society, engaging with the world around us.
Okay, so how does that work? If we're not looking to institutions for all the answers, how do we actually put this personal faith into practice?
Well, it's about bringing those personal convictions, those values into everything you do, not just talking the talk, but walking the walk,
Yeah, I get that. So it's about action, not just words. But what guides that action? If we're not following a set of rules, how do we know what the right thing to do is?
Well, the text uses a powerful example here, one I think a lot of people can relate to. They talk about Jesus.
Okay, yeah. I see where you're going with this. He wasn't exactly known for always going by the book.
Exactly. The Urantia book talks about how he broke from tradition, challenging the status quo, emphasizing things like actually caring for the sick, feeding the hungry. Actions speak louder than words.
Right, it's about living your values, not just talking about them. But that makes me wonder, if we're all supposed to be figuring things out for ourselves, how do we avoid the pitfalls that can come with organized religion? The stuff the text warns about.
That's such an important question, and the Urantia book doesn't shy away from it. It acknowledges that even with the best intentions, institutions can become, well, kind of off track.
Okay, so what are some warning signs? What should we watch out for?
Let me see. It talks about dogma becoming more important than actual compassion. Like when a group is so focused on having the right answers that they forget to ask the important questions.
Yeah, or they become afraid to question, afraid to be wrong.
Right, and it also talks about the dangers of material wealth and power, when those things become more important than the spiritual mission.
So that whole money changes everything, that applies to religious institutions too.
Oh, absolutely. The text is very clear about that. And it talks about the potential for religious leaders to become, well, more concerned with administration and control than actually serving their community's spiritual needs.
It's like that saying, absolute power corrupts absolutely, right? If one person has all the control, are they really serving the people or just, their own ego?
That's a really insightful connection. And, the Urantia book seems to be advocating for a much more egalitarian approach to faith.
What do you mean by that?
Well, it's less about hierarchy, less about who's in charge. It's more about recognizing that every individual, every single person, has inherent value and worth.
Because if everyone is a child of God, then in a way, we're all on equal footing.
Exactly. And that actually ties into another warning sign that the text brings up. It talks about the dangers of religious groups fostering a sense of superiority.
Like an us versus them mentality.
Exactly. And that's where cultivating that strong internal compass, that personal connection, becomes so important. Because it allows you to see the inherent worth and dignity of everyone, regardless of their beliefs or background.
So it's not about looking to an institution or a leader to tell you who's in and who's out. It's about finding that guidance from within, right?
Yes. And, that takes courage because it means being willing to question assumptions, to think for yourself, and sometimes, to walk a different path than the crowd.
But isn't that what true faith is all about? Having the courage to follow your own internal compass, even when it leads you off the beaten path.
I think so, because ultimately the Urantia book seems to be saying that the most profound journeys, the ones that really change us, those are the journeys we take within ourselves.
It's about cultivating that inner strength, that connection with something greater, and letting that guide you.
And trusting that even when things get tough, even when the world feels chaotic, you have within you everything you need to navigate it all.
Okay, I'm really starting to see how all of this connects. You're not escaping from reality. You're finding a source of strength within yourself that allows you to actually engage with the world more fully, more authentically.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we're all interconnected. We all have a responsibility to each other and to the world around us.
Which brings us right back to that idea of knowing God as your father and humanity as your brother. It's not just some nice saying, it's a call to action. It's about living your values in a way that uplifts and empowers everyone around you.
Yes, and when you really embrace that idea, when you see every single person as your brother, as your equal, it fundamentally changes how you approach every interaction, every challenge, everything.
It's not about judgment, it's not about division, it's about approaching it all with love and compassion. It's about wanting to understand, to connect, to make things better.
And that, I think, is where the true power of faith lies. Not in dogma or rituals or buildings, but in how it shapes our hearts, in how it inspires us to create a more just and compassionate world.
Wow, okay. We've covered a lot of ground here, and I'm really starting to see how the Urantia book offers this unique perspective on navigating the challenges of our time. But I still have one question. So we've talked about this personal faith as a kind of compass, right? But how do we actually, chart our course? How do we take all of this and make it real in our lives?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And I think the beauty of it is there's no one right answer.
Yeah.
There's no step-by-step guide because it's not about checking boxes.
Great. It's more about connecting with something deeper and then letting that guide you. But what does that look like in practice?
Well, it could look like a million different things, honestly. It might mean getting involved in social justice work, advocating for those who are marginalized.
Yeah, or even just being a more present and understanding friend, partner, family member. It's about those everyday interactions, right?
Exactly. It's about letting that inner light shine through no matter what you're doing. But it also might mean having some tough conversations, challenging the status quo, speaking out against injustice, even when it's uncomfortable.
Because sometimes that's where real growth happens, right? Outside of our comfort zones.
Absolutely. But it's important to remember, this isn't about being perfect or having all the answers. It's a journey. There will be setbacks, doubts, moments where you question everything.
We've all been there.
The important thing is to keep coming back to that inner compass, that source of strength and guidance.
Trusting the journey even when it gets bumpy.
Exactly. And approaching it all, every bit of it, with love and compassion. For yourself and for others.
That's so important because it's easy to get caught up in anger or judgment, especially these days. But that doesn't really get us anywhere, does it?
No, it just creates more division.
Yeah.
And if we really want to see real change, lasting change, it has to start with our own hearts and minds.
We have to be willing to look inward, challenge our own biases, and approach every interaction with this genuine desire to understand, to connect.
I think that's beautifully said. Because ultimately, we're all in this together, right? This whole crazy, beautiful, messy world, we're all just trying to figure it out.
And that's kind of a beautiful thing when you think about it. We're all connected, all part of something so much bigger than ourselves.
And that realization, that connection, it can be so empowering, especially when everything feels uncertain and chaotic. It reminds us that we have a choice in how we respond.
We can choose fear, or we can choose love. We can choose division, or we can choose connection.
And those choices, they matter because they have this ripple effect.
It's like even the smallest act of kindness, the smallest effort to understand can make a difference.
Exactly.
Wow. This has been an amazing conversation, really insightful stuff. So to wrap things up, for those listening, what's the one thing you hope they take away from all of this?
That's a good question. I think if there's one thing, it's to remember that faith, true faith, it's not about having all the answers. It's not about following a set of rules. It's about that inner journey, that connection with something greater and letting that guide you. And it's about recognizing that we're all connected, all part of this human family, all just trying to find our way. And when we can tap into that, that's where the real magic happens.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And, it's a journey we're all on together. So to everyone listening, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the Urantia book and this really profound exploration of faith in a changing world. We hope this conversation has sparked something in you, inspired you to look inward and to connect with something greater than yourself. Until next time, keep seeking, keep exploring, and keep diving deep.